African cichlids suck, bro. And I'm gonna give you 5 reasons why. And stick around to the end of the video because I'm also gonna give you some reasons why you might wanna keep African cichlids anyway. All right, here we go. This is my peacock and hap tank Alcatraz, with all peacocks and haps except for one lone mbuna right here named Icarus. He's a yellow lab. And for this video, I'll be referring to African cichlids, but I'm actually talking about just peacock and haps, although a lot of the things I'm gonna say will apply to African cichlids across the board. The first problem with African cichlids is that they're a black hole for your money. You see this guy right here, this is Ferk the second. I used to have Ferk the second who passed away recently, and I wanted to make sure that I had a replacement for him. And the only place I could find one was for, hold on one second. Stella, my wiener dog, wanted to play, and that's all she's doing is jumping around, so all you can hear is toenails clicking around on the floor. But anyway, what I was saying was Ferk the second was very hard to find. You could only find him on Ron Cichlid's website, and they only had a large one. And with fish, the larger they get, the more you're gonna pay. He was $150. Was it worth it? Well, for me it was, because I really wanted to have another Furcicata. But you get what I'm saying, these fish aren't cheap, so you're gonna pay a premium for them. And then you're gonna have to pay for shipping on top of that.
Here's the thing though, if you're into this hobby, and more specifically into African cichlids, then you're probably the kind of crazy that will spend insane amounts of money on your fish, and you might not even consider that you have a problem. When I say expensive, now I don't mean like saltwater fish expensive, and typically not even as much as Ferk the second was. I'm usually spending about $40 to $70 for a 3 to 4 inch size range. I'll try to get at least 4 to 6 of them at a time to help deal with shipping costs, which are typically about the price of ordering another extra fish, except you don't get the extra fish, of course. And you can save money by ordering smaller fish, but keep in mind that if you're doing an all-male cichlid tank, and most of us are doing that, then the smaller the fish you get, the more likely it is that your male is going to turn out to be a dull and ugly female. Some people order multiple unsexed fish in the 1.5 to 2 inch size range and keep them in a growout tank, hoping that at least one will turn out to be a male, and then rehome the others. I did that with these livingstonii, and obviously wasn't thinking when I did this because these fish can take absolutely forever before they show any color at all. Large war haps are typically slower to color up, so this will be their home for the foreseeable future. If you'd like to order some fish from Ron Cichlids, then you can save money there by using the discount code Cichlid Charmer 10 at checkout, and that'll give you 10% off your entire order.
Another thing you can do to save money is to get your fish from a local breeder. That'll save you a lot of money because they usually cost about $10 or so for the fish itself, and then you don't have to pay for shipping. I recently did that with this guy.
And he's looking pretty good so far. He's mixing in well with the cretins from Alcatraz too. Kinda looks like that Mdoka whitelips he tends to hang out with. He doesn't have a nuchal hump yet, so no mind control powers. When you have African cichlids, you also will be paying for high quality food, by the way. Why would you feed your boys anything less? You have expensive fish who like to dress in outrageous outfits, so feeding them cheap food that dulls their colors just doesn't make sense. Good food is going to cost you a bit more, so keep that in mind, but it doesn't have to break the bank. I use Northfin cichlid food, which I've used since the very beginning, Ron's cichlid food, and a dash of TDO Chroma Boost. These foods aren't cheap, but they're not insanely expensive, and the ingredients are top shelf. Just look at these nut jobs go at it. The only thing they love more than a successful hit on another inmate is supper time. All of a sudden, I'm feeling like I need to feed them more. Must feed more. Oh shit, the blue dolphin doesn't need a nuchal hump.
Subscribe or someone dies. Ding ding.
There's a reason why I call my 240-gallon African cichlid tank Alcatraz. It's because these fish are more like notorious criminal nut jobs than fish. And so it's only fitting that they should live in a penitentiary, don't you think? If you're gonna get into African cichlids, then you have to be aware that the main reason people switch from keeping African cichlids and go back to a community tank is because of their aggression. And you have to be the kind of person that can handle their aggression, or you're gonna go back to community tanks, or even worse, leave the hobby entirely.
If you're coming from a community tank background, then you've probably only experienced this type of aggression if you accidentally purchased a mean fish without doing your research first. Always do your research. Or if you had some fin nippers in with your lovely angelfish. So you wouldn't know what I'm talking about when I bring up African cichlid aggression. There are meaner fish out there for sure, but you have to have some knowledge on how to handle Africans, or your venture into their world will end unsuccessfully. If you're squeamish around herd animals to the point that you can't function, then you should stay away from these fish because you're setting yourself up for failure.
With African cichlids, it isn't all about getting them to get along because this will never happen 100% of the time. You're going to end up with fish that get beat up, and they'll wind up with cloudy eyes or damaged scales, their fins will be torn, or they could just be on the verge of death at the top or bottom of your tank. And you have to be able to take action and act reasonably when this happens without it ruining your life. I mean, with a lot of people, if they saw a fish that was almost dead and had been obviously tormented all night, this would be all that they could handle and they would end up getting rid of all their fish. You can't be that kind of person if you're going to keep African cichlids.
There are definitely tricks you can do to mitigate their violent insanity, but remember this, all those tricks work some of the time, and none of those tricks work all of the time.
Some people want to watch their fish tanks whenever they feel like it. Maybe it's in the morning when they get up, they'll take a look. Or maybe when they're feeding their fish, they'll look at them and make sure they're okay. Or maybe they'll skip an entire day of watching their fish. And you can do this with a lot of community tanks. But I already compared my tank to a prison and I told you why. So can you imagine the warden and all the guards just taking a day off and letting the prisoners do what they want for a while? You think there might be a brawl in cell block number 99? African cichlids aren't your normal fish, so you have to be watching all the time. Well, at least you have to give them a lot of your attention a lot of the time, because bad things are going to happen in your tank, and you have to be ready when it does.
The good news is that if you have African cichlids, then you're probably really into your fish, or you wouldn't have chosen fish like this. So you're probably watching them too much already, like when you should be doing the dishes, or hanging out with your wife, or going to work. So for most of us, watching your fish all the time won't actually be a problem. By the way, are you already keeping African cichlids, or are you just thinking about starting a tank? Let us know. So here's what I do. I wake up in the morning and give them a small feeding, watching them to make sure they're all eating and nothing nasty happened overnight. I go to work, on edge the entire time, wondering what the heck is going on in Alcatraz. I come home and watch them to make sure they all had a good day at the office. I feed them their main feeding a few hours later and again make sure all is well and that they're all eating. If someone isn't eating, then he's either stressed out or sick or both. And I'll take a look at them here and there until bedtime. Sometimes I'll hear some splashing around, and I'll go to take a look to make sure that there wasn't a hit on one of the inmates. I do what I can for them. I mean, just imagine you were stuck in a prison with a bunch of dark souls. Wouldn't you want someone to come around and make sure you were doing okay? And by the way, I mentioned a movie title in this segment. Bonus points to anyone who can tell me what that movie title was.
If you're sitting there watching this video completely in the nude because you don't own any clothes, then consider purchasing some Cichlid Charmer nut job swag. Most shirts have the logo on one side and the other side tells everyone how crazy your cichlids are. With most products you can choose which side has the logo too. It's a great way to support this channel, and just think, you could be wearing clothes right now. Other people might appreciate that. If you have an African cichlid tank, then you can expect to be doing water changes all the time. And it's no accident. These guys love water changes. If you have a tropical tank, then you probably noticed that when you do a water change, your guys all color down and they just hang out in the corner and act timidly. Well, not these nut jobs. They go crazy for a water change. They'll color up and then they'll start chasing each other around in the tank like they're insane. Well, they are insane. But I've heard that the reason for this is because the turmoil in the tank when you're adding the water mimics spawning season in Lake Malawi. And I don't know if that's true, so if you guys know, drop a comment and let us all know. But my point is they want you to do these water changes and they'll do everything in their power to get you to do them. They'll be eating as much food as they can so that they can poop more, and then you'll have to keep the water clean by doing water changes all the time. They'll even use their mind powers to get you to feed them more. So you have to be on your game, making sure you're doing water changes as needed to keep your nitrates down, because that'll keep your fish healthy and your water clear.
Alcatraz usually gets about a 70% water change once per week, but even doing that, the nitrate levels will slowly creep up past 40 parts per million, and so every now and then I'll do an extra water change during the week. I do water changes on Sunday or Monday because that's when it's easiest for me. You can't skip your water changes with African cichlids because they're so messy, so do whatever you can to make it less of a chore for you. I actually enjoy tank maintenance because I'm a nut job myself and it feels good to make their home nice for them, but I could see where it could become something you might dread. Make it as easy as possible. Use a good quality submersible pump with a hose and stop using your buckets or even your Python system. A submersible pump is the way to go. Links to all my gear and supplies are in the video description. Choose a day to schedule your water changes when you don't have a lot going on and you won't be too tired to do it. Make it a priority for that day so everything else can fit in around your water changes. And as I said, your inmates will actually love when you add your water back, so you can enjoy this time watching your fish getting something that they really enjoy.
It can be fun adding outside species in with your African cichlids, right? Well, no. I mean, it's fun to think about sometimes what kind of fish might look good in your tank, but actually doing it is another thing. These guys, first of all, water parameters are different than most other fish. They like high pH and hard water, and a lot of fish don't. But aside from that even, these guys are so wild and crazy, and they have their hierarchy going on where there's the top fish all the way down to the bottom, and then you add an outsider and it can just cause trouble for that fish, and he might be living a nightmare inside your African cichlid tank. Sure, there are some fish where this can work out, but it doesn't always work out with those fish, and so you might end up with a terrorized species in your tank that's dealing with these nut jobs, just trying to survive. So already we said that you have to watch your fish all the time, and this just makes it even harder. So is it worth adding an outside species into your tank?
Some people would still say yes. You'll sometimes see synodontis catfish with African cichlids, which I used to have until one got eaten by my Malawi gar. I also had a pleco that was tormented and eventually just disappeared. I like to think that he packed his bags and moved out. I also did my research and found that red-tailed sharks are a good fit for African cichlids, so I added mine for my community tank early on in my African cichlid experience, and this worked out really well for a few weeks. I woke up one morning and found him pale with battle wounds all over his body. I moved him back to his original tank and he recovered nicely, but I don't think he ever forgot his experience into the underworld. You can certainly try this type of thing, but if you ask me, it just isn't worth it. Besides, if you have fish this hot,
Too sexy by far.
then why would you need anything else anyway?
But it isn't all bad with African cichlids. I mean, yeah, they do suck if you're the wrong kind of person for them or they're the wrong kind of fish for you. But if you do mix well with African cichlids, then there are some great bonuses that you can get from them. And one of them is the color. I mean, just look at Zeke here. He's with these beautiful black stripes and the yellow on his body with the red heart, and then the yellow mbuna right here. Look at that. He's just, and you can't get that kind of yellow with the peacocks and haps. This mbuna yellow is just the only way you can get this. And they also have unique body shapes, and then also their finnage is just gorgeous. The way it comes to a peak, like look at my Rhodesia right here. His fins are just beautiful. But it isn't just about the beauty of the fish, it's also their personalities. And African cichlids definitely have personalities. They're not like your normal tropical fish where they just swim back and forth all day and they eat and that's it. These guys get personalities and you get to know them. When you get home from work, they get excited to see you, well, because they think you're gonna feed them. When you open the fridge, they also get excited because they think you're gonna feed them, but they also know you. I mean, I can stick my hand in the tank and they'll come up and swim right by me. Normal fish aren't like this, they're different. And it's one of the bonuses to keeping African cichlids. Even with all those negatives, for me, it's still worth it to keep African cichlids. But I know that list of cons can be pretty daunting, but the list of pros, I think, is heavily weighted in their favor. What about you though? Do you keep African cichlids already, or would you consider keeping them after watching this video? And by the way, if you've enjoyed watching this, please remember to like and subscribe. You've been watching the Cichlid Charmer, and as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.
Check out the Nuchus squamulatus. He's the Victorian hap that I had to move over to the growout tank a while back because of an uprising in Alcatraz. Looks like he's doing well and more confident than he was before the accident. He's going to be a good looking fish.